dive into our program, I want to make sure that you have taken notice of the fact that we have 3 presidents here today. We have our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln. We have our 18th president, Ulysses S. Grant. Our First Lady, Rhonda Keenum, pointed out to me, she's an astute observer of history, that we also have a 19th president here in Mark Keenum, and that he forgot to wear his top hat today. But we're going to make do anyway, aren't we, Mr. President? George Buss from Illinois helps us get in the spirit of today with his portrayal of Abraham Lincoln, and Kurt Fields helps us get in the spirit of opening the Grant Presidential Library with his presence here. Please give them both a round of applause. This is a huge day in the life of Mississippi State University, and we are so thrilled to have each and every one of you with us today. We have an impressive gathering of dignitaries to help us do this in style, and I'm going to take the privilege of moderator, and Governor, I think you will appreciate this as well. There is a very detailed program that has biographies of each of our speakers. We encourage you to read those biographies because in the interest of time today, we're not going to be reading them from the podium. And so we will have very brief introductions. Don't interpret that as a lack of appreciation. Interpret that as being dedicated to getting out of here sometime today. And so we'll move into it. At this point, I want to recognize a great friend of Mississippi State University, a former member of Congress who represented our university back in the 70s when I was a student here. He served his state and his country well. He had a tremendous interest in the library, and we're very thrilled today to have David Bowen, the former congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi, who will deliver our invocation.
Thank you, Sid. May we pray. Our Father, as we gather here today in this impressive library to honor distinguished work of historical research and preservation, we ask your blessing upon these efforts and upon the work of this outstanding university, its leadership, its faculty, staff, and students, as well as other academic institutions and scholarship represented here today. Our Father, lead us and guide us in all things so that your will might be done. In your name we pray. Amen.
Corey Reese, soloist, William Tiffin, soloist, and the violinist Shandy Phillips. We're grateful to them for sharing their talents today with us with period-appropriate selections. And now, to welcome you to this event officially on behalf of the university, our 19th president, Dr. Mark Keenum.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. You know, if I didn't know any better with such a tremendous outpouring here this afternoon like we have here now, I would guess we're about to introduce a football coach or something. But we're about to do something much, much more, I think, outstanding and special for our university. This is an opportunity this afternoon for us to bring this new splendid addition to our university. And this is something that we have been looking forward to for quite some time. Now, I know to have an occasion like this, to be able to bring such a special new addition to our university, there was a lot of work that went into this, and there were a lot of people who contributed to this great day that we're celebrating today. And I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to recognize some of those individuals who've had such a tremendous part in us being here this afternoon. First of all, I want to recognize and thank Chief Justice Frank Williams and his wife, Virginia. Chief Justice Williams, for those of you who may not know, is the retired former Chief Justice of the great state of Rhode Island. He was also, and still is, the president of the Ulysses S. Grant Association, and it was through his steady hand and guidance that we're here today to dedicate this new presidential library. And if you haven't noticed, his name and his wife's name, Virginia, is up here too, because they've made a tremendous contribution to our university with their Lincoln collection, their Lincolniana collection to our university. So Justice Williams, thank you, sir, for all that you've done for this occasion. I also want to thank Dr. John Marzalek, who is the executive director of the Ulysses S. Grant Association. He's also MSU Professor Emeritus of History. And I would dare say that if not for John Marzalek, we wouldn't be here this afternoon. For the leadership that he's provided and the work that he's done, he is the catalyst that has allowed us to come bring these treasures to our university. So Dr. Marzalek, thank you, sir, for all that you've done. Of course, our tenacious, persistent, intelligent Dean of our Mitchell Memorial Library, Frances Coleman, she has been there from the beginning. She is the one that has had this vision, this can-do, never quit attitude that has worked to make this day very, very special. And here we are, Dean Frances Coleman. Thank you for your leadership. And to the Ulysses S. Grant Association, I know we have several members of the association with us for this occasion. I want to thank you for your trust and confidence in Mississippi State University to be the permanent home of this priceless treasure. Thank you for your confidence and your support for our university. I also want to thank our own Mississippi State University Foundation for the work that they did to help facilitate this occasion. And to our very own Governor of the great state of Mississippi, the Honorable Phil Bryant. Governor Bryant, thank you, sir, for your leadership and all that you've done to help make this occasion special. Thank you, sir. And to the Mississippi Legislature, who provided the funding for this wonderful addition to our library, $10 million of support. I know we have several members of the legislature here today. I also want to thank you for your confidence and your belief in Mississippi State to make an investment here in this university, but an investment in the entire state of Mississippi for our future. So thank you to the legislature for all that they've done. And of course, the leadership of our Lieutenant Governor, Tate Reeves, and our Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, have also made this day extremely special for us. our Board of Trustees of the Institutions of Higher Learning, represented here today by the President of the Board, C.D. Smith, and Dr. Walt Starr, who is here with us. I want to thank the Board of Trustees for their confidence and their belief in Mississippi State to support us in this long journey. So let's thank the IHL Board. And to thank so many of you as I look around the room who have helped be encouraging and supportive, and all of the help that you've provided, the library staff and the team that Dean Coleman has here, and the tireless work that they've put into this. Thank all of you for what you've done for this wonderful occasion. Well, many of you may know this, some of you may not know this, but President Grant and I arrived here at Mississippi State right at about the same time. I'll never forget it. I had been named president. It was the fall of 2008, but I was still in Washington with Rhonda and was preparing to move my family back here home to Mississippi State. I'll never forget, I got a call from interim Mississippi State University President Dr. Roy Ruby about the Ulysses S. Grant Association being interested in moving from Illinois to our campus. Dean Coleman and Dr. Marzalak were in discussions with Chief Justice Williams, who was the president of the U.S. Grant Association, about the possibility of the grant papers and collection moving from the great state of Illinois to Mississippi State University. Well, I'll tell you, I was immediately excited when I got that call and saw the possibilities and the opportunities for our university to have such an association, to bring such a prestigious collection to our state. And we knew that we had the resources here to make this an outstanding center. So we set out and were committed to make it happen. So in fact, as I said, my family's moving vans and President Grant's moving vans literally arrived here in Starkville at the same time. And Grant and I have been here ever since. Well, one of the very first media calls that I received during my very first month on the job here, this was in January of '09, was from a reporter with the Chicago Tribune. The reporter wanted to know what I thought about the papers of Ulysses S. Grant coming to the deep South to a university like Mississippi State from Illinois. Well, I told her I couldn't be happier about it. In fact, I was just downright giddy about it. And how proud and how honored I was that we would be able to preserve, protect, and showcase these documents that chronicle a critical history of our nation, but also a critical history of the state of Mississippi. She asked if I thought, it's a question that I knew why she was probably originally calling me, but she said, "Don't you think it's very ironic, strange, and peculiar that Mississippi was now home to the Grant collection?" I said, "No. I don't see anything strange or peculiar or ironic about it at all." Which led to her second question. "Why would you say something like that?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you." I said, "Stop and think about it." I said, there was not another state in the nation that had more to do with propelling Grant's career than the state of Mississippi. It was Grant's success here in Mississippi, I said, that earned him the special gratitude and the confidence of President Lincoln and propelled him into a much larger, grander role in leading the Army during the war. And afterward, with his celebrity, propelled him into being the President of the United States. So I said it is most appropriate and fitting for his library to be located in the great state of Mississippi. Thanks to the generosity of the Williams and their passion for scholarship and the history of our great nation, this past summer we were able to acquire the largest privately held collection of Abraham Lincoln and Civil War material in the nation, right here at Mississippi State. The Frank J. and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana, along with our remarkable Ulysses S. Grant collection, have made Mississippi State and the Grant Presidential Library a truly national center for the study of the American Civil War. I also want to share with you that Stephen D. Lee, General Stephen D. Lee, served for 19 years as the president of this university. It was Mississippi A&M College when he was leading this institution. But while he was president here, President Lee was a strong, forceful advocate for the national reconciliation of our nation and putting the aftermath of the war behind us and looking to the future. He worked tirelessly on that effort, traveling to the northern states and preaching the message of unity and brotherhood and rebuilding the South. He also was a passionate historian, and he was most passionate with trying to establish a military park at Vicksburg, the site of Ulysses S. Grant's greatest military victory. Well, as it turned out, Stephen D. Lee was the commander of the artillery at Vicksburg for the Confederacy, and he was a combatant at arms with Grant. And at the surrender of Vicksburg, Stephen D. Lee was a prisoner of Ulysses S. Grant. And President Grant, or General Grant, would go on later, and he actually paroled Stephen D. Lee and allowed him to continue to take up arms. I find that fascinating. His passion, Stephen D. Lee's passion for bringing this military park was relentless. And he lobbied the Congress for federal funding to secure funds to establish the military park. And he was successful in doing that. And in 1899, President William McKinley, the U.S. president, appointed Stephen D. Lee to be a member of a 3-member commission to actually take those funds and establish the military park. And his fellow commissioners elected him to be the chairman of that commission, and he set to work, resigned his position here at Mississippi State after 19 years, and devoted the rest of his life until 1908 building the military park at Vicksburg. It's worth noting that President Grant's oldest son, Frederick Dent Grant, was one of the featured speakers at the dedication of the Stephen D. Lee statue at Vicksburg, a year after Stephen D. Lee's death in 1909. In fact, President Lee's only child, a son named Blewett Harrison Lee, and Frederick Grant became very close and very dear friends. Blewett Lee would go on to be the principal orator at the commemoration of Grant's 95th birthday in Galena, Illinois in 1917. So the ties between Mississippi State, the state of Mississippi, and Ulysses S. Grant are in fact quite long and quite deep. After the war, President Lee helped build a new educational institution, this institution. That this very day, this institution continues to look to the future while respecting and always remembering our past. It is a past, a history that resonates on our campus, a campus like many in the Deep South that were led by former Confederate officers in the immediate aftermath of the war. That is indeed part of our history. But now, President Grant, President Lincoln are part of our story too, and part of our future. Through these landmark academic collections, I would submit that perhaps no other university in the nation is doing more to bring substantive academic balance to the study of the conditions that led up to the Civil War, the propagation of the war, and the long road to Reconstruction and national reunification. Our university offers a unique opportunity for the study of the Civil War, not from a northern perspective or a southern perspective, but from a truly American perspective. So I hope that this work to more fully understand our past will remind us of how much all Americans have in common, and reiterate that our shared devotion to liberty and justice for all enables us to overcome the divisions that from time to time appear among us. At Mississippi State, again, we respect our history, but we're moving forward with opportunities for all. Our eyes are set firmly on the future as we work to strongly serve the great people of this great state. And I hope that people visiting the Grant Library and the Lincoln Collection in the years to come will recognize this truly wonderful facility located here in the Deep South stands as a shining beacon of reconciliation for our nation. It is indeed a very historic day for the Mississippi State University family and the great state of Mississippi. Our students, alumni, faculty, and staff, donors and friends, all should and I know are very, very proud of this university today. I want to thank all of you again for being here to make this memorable, historic day such a great, outstanding occasion. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Keenum. Before we proceed, all of you here today are special, and all of you here today are inspirations to us for taking time out of your day to help us with this celebration. Anytime with a crowd this large, when you start recognizing individuals, you run the risk of skipping someone, and I hope we don't do that. But there are just a few people that I would like to recognize at this juncture. One has had a long and productive relationship with Mississippi State University, served as our former president, and has been a great friend of this library, Dr. Malcolm Patera. Dr. Patera? We also are delighted today to have Senator Josh Harkins, his wife Andrea. Senator Harkins is chairman of the Senate University and Colleges Committee. Senator Harkins. And in the encyclopedia under the entry Old Bulldog, there's an 8x10 photograph of our Central District Transportation Commissioner, Dick Hall. Dick, we're so glad to have you with us today. Judge, you remarked last night at the dinner in your honor that you felt somehow as this event might be perceived as the second most important thing we were doing in the last couple of days, and that perhaps the first was introducing a new football coach. And we do like football, as Dr. Keenum said this morning, but I do want to point out that our Director of Athletics, John Cohen, is here today at your event after making his announcement this morning, because John takes his academic responsibilities seriously. We probably have the only athletic director in the Southeastern Conference who's an English major, and he just hired a coach who also is an English major. So, John, thank you for joining us today. This would not be possible, as Dr. Keenum mentioned, without the support of the Board of Trustees of Institutions of Higher Learning, our state college board. And leading that entity now is a bulldog from Meridian, Mississippi, and a great friend of this institution, C.D. Smith, Jr. C.D.?
Thank you, Sid. I have some prepared remarks, but just based on Dr. Keenum, I'd like just 2 points. I was here when we hired this 19th president of Mississippi State University, and we've hired a lot of presidents at other institutions subsequent to his hiring, but I can tell you, his was the best. Yeah. And my other thought is that I was born and reared in Vicksburg, and I can tell you, if you've not been to that National Military Park, it is a national treasure housed here in Mississippi. You need to go. If you're interested in the Civil War, go to that park. It'll show you a lot of important stuff. So now to my remarks. It is my pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the Board of Trustees of State Institutions of Higher Learning. Today's ceremony marks an important milestone for Mississippi State University and the state of Mississippi. Today we celebrate the addition to Mitchell Memorial Library that will serve as the home of the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library. Today we're reminded of the importance of preserving and protecting the papers and artifacts of our shared history so that we may study it, learn from it, and move forward together, stronger and with greater understanding. Today we celebrate the selection of Mississippi State University to house these important artifacts, papers, and memorabilia of both Ulysses S. Grant and Abraham Lincoln. Its selection demonstrates the confidence that both the Grant Association and the Williams family have in the university to serve as caretakers of these priceless papers and items. Mississippi State University now stands proudly among the leading destinations for research on the Civil War and those two individuals. Today, we reaffirm the university's mission of teaching, research, and service. We celebrate the role as a marketplace for ideas where wisdom and truth are sought, where civil discourse and respectful debate facilitate the seeking, and where coming together to seek, discuss, and discover will lead to greater understanding. By gaining a greater understanding of our shared history, we will be able to build a brighter future for all of us. Today, we celebrate the beginning of a new place to seek, discuss, and gain greater understanding. Thank you for the opportunity to join in on this auspicious occasion. We look forward to the scholarship, the enlightenment, and the enlightenment that will emanate from these halls in the decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you, C.D. As we've talked about today, a great deal of the Civil War was propagated right here in Mississippi. There is a national military park at Corinth, right across the state line from the battlefield at Shiloh. There is a military park at Vicksburg that our own Stephen D. Lee took a personal hand in putting together. There are people who visit Mississippi and surrounding states and other places all over the country in pursuit of historical tourism. We have a governor in Phil Bryant who understands the role of historical tourism. That's why the Mississippi Development Authority has been involved in this project since inception, and while we hope that the scholarship that we celebrate here today is a part of it, there also is that tourism, something that we can take in Mississippi and use to create jobs and opportunity. And it takes a person of vision to do that. We have such a person in our 64th governor of the great state of Mississippi, Phil Bryant. Governor?
Thank you and good afternoon. First, let me say how happy I am to see our dear friend Sid Salter here today. And my, doesn't he look good? Great job. This is an honor as governor of the state of Mississippi to be here on such a historic occasion for Mississippi State University. Now, what a week it has been. To have a presidential library and a new football coach all in 1 week is more than we can bear. But we will try as we might to hold up with our joy. See, it is true joy to know that these great artifacts, Mr. Chief Justice, of our 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, will be here in Starkville, Mississippi, in this great presidential library of U.S. Grant. Now, never could we have imagined a day when the state of Mississippi would pay $10 million to bring U.S. Grant to Mississippi. But he is here, and here he will stay. The 19th president of this great university, Mark Keenum, did a remarkable job. There is nothing more that I could add or detract from his historical lesson for us here today. But I can tell you I have long respected this man as a public servant. While he served in our nation's capital, I used to remind him, and I believe then, as I told Senator Thad Cochran, he was the best chief of staff any one congressman could have in Washington, D.C. You are fortunate to have him as your president. Mr. Congressman, thank you for being here. Gregg Harper is serving, as you may know, as leading the House in a particular committee that has to oversee the United States Capitol and much of the actions that go on there. They actually call him the mayor of the United States Capitol. So if you would need anything that might suit your interest in Washington, D.C., I would talk to the mayor before I left here. Ulysses S. Grant, what an amazing story. Born in Point Pleasant, Ohio. Very meager means, a family that brought that young Hiram Ulysses S. Grant, Hiram Ulysses Grant, into the world on April 27th of 1822. Difficult times in the United States. A young man from humble backgrounds that went from selling firewood to becoming the general of the United States Army in approximately 5 years. 2 years later, this poor firewood salesman would become president of the United States. What a journey. Imagine the determination and hard times that he must have gone through during that journey. I was struck by the program here today as it reflects upon the wall that is written a saying of Ulysses S. Grant. Although a soldier by profession, I have never felt any sort of fondness for war, and I've never advocated it as except a means of peace. Now, he was not actually named Ulysses S. Grant. That happened to be a mistake by a congressman, Mr. Chairman, who was recommending him as a student at the United States Military Academy. Not particularly knowing his full name, he wrote Ulysses S. Grant down on the application. The name followed him. His fellow recruits became to call him Sam, as U.S. Grant was seen as a reflection of our Uncle Sam. So Sam Grant became a graduate of the United States Military Academy, went on to the battles in the war with Mexico. But he retired from the United States Army in 1854 and thought his military career had ended until the War of the States began in 1861. History reflects the rest that had occurred. Now, I have come to believe that Ulysses S. Grant was a soldier that saw the duty and responsibility he had and felt compelled to carry it out. I remember my first trip to Gettysburg, Mississippi, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And as I saw those photographs of the old soldiers in the early 1900s, gray and old, with walking canes, but reaching across a picket fence, one to another, Confederate and Union, embracing each other with a kindness that can only be shared by those who have suffered in the crucible of war. They fought for very different causes, but they laid down their arms and, as President Lincoln said, came to bind up the wounds of this great nation. We must continue to do that. This exhibit here today of President Lincoln and President Grant will go so far along the road of reconciliation, so that the rest of the world might look to Starkville, Mississippi as the place that it continues, that we honor these two great presidents for their courage, for their determination, for their love of this great nation, and so that we may always enjoy this wonderful nation and government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and pray that it shall never perish from the face of the earth. Generations hence will come here, I believe hundreds of thousands of tourists. Each year some 20 million people visit this great state. Thousands upon thousands will come to see this exhibit, to marvel that it is here in Mississippi. They will come to know us better, for this is a great day for Mississippi's future. We cannot build our future on anyone's past, but we will not forget what has happened. We will go on as Grant and Lincoln and Lee and Davis and all those that served would have wanted us to. This is a new day of opportunity for us here in Mississippi. Let us make the most of it. Thank you for being here today, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Governor. In the process of making this a reality, we have had a great ally in Congressman Gregg Harper. Gregg has a personal interest in history, a personal interest in the Library of Congress, and a personal interest in this type of archival work. And he's put that interest to great use on our behalf. I think it's fitting today that we have a congressman who served Starkville and Mississippi State back in the 70s, and we have our current Congressman Gregg Harper. Gregg, your friendship in this project, your support of the library has been much appreciated in these quarters. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Congressman Gregg Harper.
Thank you. Thank you, Sid. Wow. If you haven't been in there yet, which most of you haven't, you're going to love it. Congratulations, Dr. Keenum. This is a crown jewel, something that everyone's going to be proud of. But every time over the time I've been in Congress, every time I've talked to Dr. Marzalek, he is intense and so excited about Ulysses S. Grant and the vision that it takes that. And we've seen it. And Dean Coleman, thank you for all your hard work and things that you do here. So it's a great day, and congratulations to all involved. In just a few minutes, I'll have the opportunity to introduce two special guests. And the only reason I got invited was because they said, hey, if you can get the Archivist of National Archives and the librarian of the Library of Congress to come, we'll let you say a few words. So I'm excited to have both of them here. But you know, in Mississippi, our life has just seemed to always revolve around the Civil War and that history. And as a child growing up and with a brother, we toured all these Civil War battlefields and monuments, and it was just part of us. And we were so, interested in it. We asked our dad when we were little, said, Dad, do we have any ancestors that fought for the South during the Civil War? And he said, no, son, we didn't. There were two groups that were exempt from service in the Civil War. One were the blacksmiths, because they were so important to the war effort. and the other were horse thieves, and we didn't have any blacksmiths in the family. So, as many of you know, Mississippi State University is one of only 6 universities housing a presidential library. And there's no other library like the one that we're celebrating today. This structure is now a one-of-a-kind collection, including the Frank J. and Virginia Williams collection of Lincolniana, considered the largest privately owned Abraham Lincoln collection in America, as well as Mississippi State University's Congressional and Political Research Center, which houses 9 congressional collections, including those of many very well-known MSU alumni, Senator John C. Stennis, Congressman Sonny Montgomery, Congressman David Bowen, our late and precious friend Alan Nunnally. And if it's okay with Dean Coleman, I'd like to be the 10th. So I hereby, after years of that, so thank you. It's, she has worn me out since I started. I want you to know, I give up. So we're excited about that. Back in the summer of 1864, General Grant launched a massive, grueling campaign that went on for months. He had promised President Lincoln he would fight on the line if it took all summer. In a telegram to Grant, President Lincoln wrote the following, and you'll see it in just a moment. President Lincoln said to General Grant, and I quote, "I have received your dispatch expressing your unwillingness to break your hold where you are. Neither am I willing. Hold on with a bulldog's grip and chew and choke as much as possible." After that campaign, very fittingly, political cartoonists would illustrate General Grant as a massive bulldog. How fitting that he would now be here. It's my honor to introduce a person who's no stranger to Mississippi State University. He's been here before and a great friend. He's the 10th Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero. Since his confirmation in November of 2009, David has transformed the National Archives and Records Administration towards a goal of transparency, participation, and collaboration. Appointed by the 44th and 45th President of the United States, David Ferriero is responsible for safeguarding and making available so many of our nation's treasures and valuable records. Just to name a few, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all there in the archive, in the rotunda of National Archives in Washington, D.C. He has been a pioneer when it comes to digital technologies for the library systems during his impressive career. Most importantly, he's a great friend of this university. Please join me in welcoming the 10th Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that wonderful introduction. I am honored to be back in Starkville to celebrate the dedication of this wonderful library, and especially to celebrate the Williams Collection, a wonderful gift to the university. President Grant and the National Archives have a long and rewarding history, beginning in 1964 with the late John Simon, and since 2008, John Marzalak here at Mississippi State. Our National Historical Publications and Record Commission has funded the 32-volume papers of Ulysses S. Grant Project, a supplementary volume, and the 2-volume personal memoirs published this year by Harvard University Press. Support which enabled the launch of the digital edition of the papers of Ulysses S. Grant, a total of more than $2 million in federal funding. So when people ask you what your tax dollars are going for, that's what they're going for. As Archivist of the United States, I oversee 14 presidential libraries, from Herbert Hoover in West Branch, Iowa, to Barack Obama on the south side of Chicago. And we're in frequent contact with the hundreds of sites across the country, documenting the lives and administrations of other presidents. On behalf of all of us, I'm delighted to welcome Ulysses S. Grant to the group of presidential libraries. Presidential libraries are a uniquely American phenomenon, and President Roosevelt articulated the vision in dedicating his own library in Hyde Park in 1941. He said, "It seems to me that the dedication of a library is in itself an act of faith. To bring together the records of the past and house them in buildings where they will be preserved for the use of men and women in the future, a nation must believe in three things. It must believe in the past, it must believe in the future, and it must, above all, believe in the capacity of its own people so to learn from the past that they can gain in judgment in creating their own future." For the use of men and women in the future, for me, that's the most important part of our work, enabling, encouraging, and inspiring the use of our records to retell the stories and to keep our history fresh. Historian Eric Foner, in his important book, Who Owns History?, has been my guide in this phase of our work. He writes, "History always has been and will be regularly rewritten in response to new questions, new information, new methodologies, and new political, social, and cultural imperatives. But that each generation can and must rewrite history does not mean that history is simply a series of myths and inventions. There are commonly accepted professional standards that enable us to distinguish good history from falsehoods like the denial of the Holocaust. Historical truth does exist, not in the scientific sense, but as a reasonable approximation of the past. But the most of those outside the ranks of professional historians to accept is that there often exists more than one legitimate way of recounting past events. So who owns history? Everyone and no one, which is why the study of the past is a constantly evolving, never-ending journey of discovery. And those who toil in these vineyards, in this case, the staff here in the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library, are the privileged guides to these journeys of discovery. Working with faculty and students and other researchers, they get to share their expertise and to learn of the richness of the collection along with their clients. And this library has already guided many of those journeys. I'm a huge fan of the acknowledgement pages of new books, and I was pleased but not surprised to see Ron Chernow's kudos to John, the staff, and the collection here. He said, "A scholarly feast for anyone remotely curious about Grant. I especially profited from the numerous oral histories, profiles, newspaper interviews, letters, and diaries that conjure up Grant's life with extraordinary vividness. The first-rate team of archivists and assistants at the library provided help with unfailing courtesy and efficiency. Recognitions of our contributions to the rewriting of history are the rewards of our careers and what puts the smiles of pride on our faces every day. And lots of people should take credit for what we are celebrating today, here today. It was a real team effort. And as your quarterback, Nick Fitzgerald, tweeted last Sunday night, a program is bigger than one person. We pride ourselves on our ability to always give relentless effort. And the results of that relentless effort are so evident as I wandered around this wonderful space today. That said, in concluding, I do want to single out one person. Having spent much of my life in academia and university research libraries, I know that libraries, as important as they are not always at the top of the administration's priority list. And for such a successful project like this one, if you don't have a president on board, forget it. So thank you, Mark, for your support of this project. And if I had thought to bring my cowbell with me, I would have given you a couple of public clangs. Thank you for the opportunity of joining you today.
The Library of Congress has been around since the early 1800s. I'm going to have the privilege now of introducing you to only the 14th librarian of the Library of Congress in all of that time. She is a great friend of so many people. She was the rock star at the Mississippi Book Festival in August, those of you that were there, when we had one event where she was there with a reception for all the librarians and all the high schools and places in the state, and you would have thought Elvis Presley had walked into the room the way she was treated. We got to do a 1-hour live interview on C-SPAN that morning at the book festival. She really is a treasure for our country. Keep in mind this as we hear. The 14th in the long history of the Library of Congress as the librarian, the first woman, the first African American. She has set a standard and set a bar so high, and what an honor to have her here today. Please help me welcome Dr. Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Harper. And I have to tell you, I always say Chairman Harper because he is the chairman of our Oversight Committee, and we are very pleased because he has a true dedication to history and making sure that it's accessible to all. And thank you, President Keatum. You made a librarian's heart sing when you said that when you face difficulties with budgets and so many other things, that you knew that you had to keep the library at this wonderful institution whole so it could be this heart and soul of it. So thank you for that. And my appreciation to Governor Bryant for the warm Southern welcome that he gave me at the book festival. I was ready to move. And this is my second trip, and it's always wonderful to be here. It's my second in 3 months. And when I think about the partnership that this represents, I have to also let you know that I'm partnering with the Archivist of the United States, Mr. David Ferriero, for being a collaborator in Washington. However, when it was mentioned that certain documents reside at the archives, I just gave a nudge and said, but in 1952, those were taken by tanks from the Library of Congress to the archives. And maybe one day we'll get them back. I really appreciate, though, being here at this momentous day at the university. And it represents so many things that are indicative of what history can bring. Ulysses Grant said, I appreciate the fact, and I'm proud of it, that the attentions I'm receiving are intended more for our country than for me personally. And I think that that quote is the essence of what we are celebrating today. And then to have, Judge Williams, the collection of Abraham Lincoln. As a native of Illinois, I can tell you that what you have collected and what you are bringing here to be part of the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Collection is a true marriage and a true gift to all of us. Now, since being sworn in as the 14th Librarian of Congress, I've had many of what I've been calling pinch me moments at the library. The collections of 23 presidents from George Washington to Calvin Coolidge, the world's largest baseball collection, the world's largest comic book collection. It's just a festival of history every day. But I have to tell you that, and those of you who are getting ready to go through those doors in a few minutes will have pinch me moments when you have an opportunity to see the treasures that are on display with technology that brings it together in a way that you can't imagine. So thank you for doing that for all of us. Now, I'm also here to give you a pledge, and I know that my partner here from the archives is part of this pledge, and we planned it a little bit, that you will have the full resources and services of the Library of Congress to supplement, to be a partner with you as you program and as you try to expand your resources here. And we want to just say that publicly here today. Now, both Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant hoped to reunite the nation during and after the Civil War. And as we've seen recently in the news, the legacy of the Civil War continues to engage Americans in a national dialogue about the participants in the war and how we remember and interpret them. The knowledge housed in this library, in this university, can only add to that conversation as we continue to wrestle with our past. But Ulysses S. Grant and Abraham Lincoln have been embraced in Mississippi in 2017 is a fitting legacy to the men who appealed to the better angels of our nature in the quest to let us have peace. So thank you again for having me, and thank you for having this.
Thank you, Dr. Hayden. This is literally probably the 12th, 13th time that I've had the pleasure of introducing Chief Justice Frank Williams. He has an incredibly impressive biography, but I'm going to introduce him now from the heart. A gentleman who is our friend, a gentleman who is our benefactor, a gentleman. Justice Frank Williams.
Thank you very much. My lawyers and the clients that they represent don't even do that for me. Some of you are standing, many of you are standing, so I'll be short. And you know, I used to tell the lawyers who appeared before me when I was a trial judge, it was the best job I ever had in the trial court, that listen to me. If Abraham Lincoln could deliver the Gettysburg Address in 2.5 minutes and with only 272 words, your memo to me could be less than 10 pages, and you can speak less than 5 minutes. I will try. President Keenum and First Lady Rhonda Keenum, thank you so much for doing this. And Governor, thanks for signing the bill with the funding and the bond issue, along with the other legislators that are here. You know, this didn't happen. The wood fairy did not come down from the heavens to put these galleries together without the hard work and all of the negotiations that go on in our Mississippi legislature, just as in the Rhode Island General Assembly, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Librarian Hayden, this is a pinch me moment because I love the book. And that's how I started at age 11 with my lunch money, buying used Lincoln books, Lincoln and Civil War books, and the rest is history 60 years later. And why we were able to give, with great satisfaction, Virginia and myself, to this great institution, some 30,000 items, half of them books and pamphlets. And I know we have the electronic means today and books on tape and audible.com, which I do use, but there will be nothing in our civilization that will ever replace the printed word. So it's been a great week. We had our first Frank and Virginia Williams lecture on Abraham Lincoln and Civil War Studies this morning with my friend of 40 years, Harold Holzer. Stand up, Harold. It was a great lecture. So I want to close. Actually, be careful when any speaker says, I want to close. You want to run to the Merlot bar because they're giving you false hope here. But I want to tell you the anecdote, and I never tire of telling this, is why Mississippi State? And how did we as donors know that Mississippi State would take loving care of our treasures? Well, something happened here that gave us an idea that they would do that they would treat these treasures and books and pamphlets with the same loving care that I think Virginia and I gave them. And that's because of the history, some of which Dr. Keenum told you just as he was coming in along with Grant. But there's a backstory to this. It was necessary to relocate the Grant papers and Grant artifacts and to find a new home for it. We also were in need at the same time of getting a new executive director because we had lost the much revered great scholar John Y. Simon, as the archivist said in his remarks. So we have this network. John Mazulik was on our board of the Ulysses S. Grant Association, and I immediately called John as the president on behalf of our association board and asked if he would step into the shoes, the rather big shoes, of John Simon as executive director. And after getting permission from his wife, Jean, he agreed to do. Then we needed a place. And as the archivist said, we already had about 30 volumes of the Grant papers, thanks to the generosity of NHPRC that had been published. We needed to finish the project and get on with our legacy. So John Mazulik puts me in touch with Dean Francis Coleman here at Mitchell Memorial Library, who I had not known, I had never met. And in one phone call, we made a deal. Sorry, President Keenum. Before your arrival, we made a deal on the phone. Now, I've been a lawyer and a judge for almost 50 years. How many deals are made like this on the phone? It's bad business for lawyers. But we did it. We did it, and going fast forward, this project took a year only, which I think is a record. But in the 9 years of the custody of the Grant Association treasures and papers, Virginia and I knew that this was the right place and the right time. And I know that the legacy that you have here, with the help of so many people, including your records, Congressman Harper, that are coming, will always be available for our citizens. In 1862, as part of President Lincoln's annual message to Congress, he admonished the American people with, "It is not that we can imagine better, but can we all do better?" And I'm pleased to say with all of you, and I think you will agree, that with these galleries and the collections that support them and the wonderful staff that serve them and the people who use them, we have in a significant way done better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justice Williams. And now we're going to hear from the man who's charged after this event is over with going into that facility and making it work. Dr. John Marzulak, Executive Director and Managing Editor of the Ulysses S. Grant Association. Dr. Marszalek.
Well, first of all, I just like to say that this is amazing to see this many people here. I just want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to take a point of personal privilege. My family is here, my sons, some of my grandchildren are here. I can see them over there. This is great to have this kind of support, and I think you have some idea by looking around this room why this has been possible. But let me just talk about what I've written down here. Consider this fact, and the judge already talked about this, when Ulysses S. Grant Association moved to the Mitchell Memorial Library in December of 2008. It was already 46 years old. Its board of directors included some of the leading historians in the nation, had Grant descendants on this board of directors. Its membership was outstandingly loyal. And the man has been mentioned, and we can't mention him often enough, John Y. Simon, the first executive director of the Grant Association, did amazing work. We have a joke in our area that we look for mistakes that John made in one of those 32 volumes. We haven't found any yet. That gives you some, I wish we could say the same thing, but we'll get into that. But in any case, John Y. Simon was a pioneer in documentary editing, one of the leaders in this field. The presidents we've had two executive directors, as Frank Williams said. We've only had two presidents. Ralph Newman, the famous Ralph Newman of Chicago, and then, of course, our Chief Justice, Frank Williams, both of whom have been dynamic leaders. The federal government, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the National Historical Publications and Records Commission has provided year upon year, as has been mentioned, of financial support. The state of Mississippi, the legislators and the governor signed a bond issue that allowed us to do what you're going to see in a few moments. But let me just mention some people that have not been mentioned today, but I think need to be because of their role here. In 2008, Mississippi University people like Vance Watson, who was an acting president at the time, Roy Ruby, who was an acting president, Francis Coleman, the dean of libraries, Stephen Canetto, the associate dean, and a group we don't mention enough, the Mitchell Memorial Library faculty and staff. They have done incredible work. And of course, we have to mention Dr. Keenum, Dr. Mark Keenum, who, when we first came here, said, we got temporary quarters now, but I promise you I'll work on this. And he did, and we're here now. There are others, of course, who've also made our progress possible. And I want to mention these people particularly. This is the Ulysses S. Grant Association faculty and staff. These are individuals who've worked most of the time unheralded to do all that has to be done. Often they do these things behind the scenes. And though they are few in number, we are one of the smallest groups like this in the nation. So we're few in number, but our staff has been absolutely enormous in achievement. And I want to mention some of their names. The late Michael B. Ballard, who provided not only his talents, but his historical reputation. We lost him about a year ago. Editors Aaron Crawford, Bob Karachuk, who's moved on to South Carolina but is here, David Nolan, Louis Gallo. These people are the people who completed those last dying gasp volumes of the papers of Ulysses S. Grant, and it's these people, some of them were gone, that produced the first complete annotated edition of the Grant memoirs. I want to also mention three people who have been absolutely instrumental in what we've done. Two of them couldn't be here, and that's the administrative assistants to the executive director. Elizabeth Coggins, who moved from here to the George W. Bush Presidential Library. Now she's working in Dallas for a nonprofit. Meg Henderson, who was one of our assistants, and while she was doing everything she was doing for us, she gained a master's in library science. She's now head of a library down on the Gulf Coast. And now we have Rebecca Houston. My wife likes to say I'm the most fortunate of all people, because I've had all these women around me, and they've all been smarter than I am, but that's no big deal. When this facility was constructed and ready to be filled with our various artifacts, Lincoln artifacts and Grant artifacts, it was outstanding archivist Ryan Sems, along with Amanda Carlock, and I know they're hiding here someplace, Kate Gregory, and a multitude of graduate and undergraduate students who've worked with us. I mean, just much too numerous to even mention. But I want to mention some other people too. Our imaginative architect, Skip Wyatt of Jackson, West Brothers construction supervisor, the incomparable Jerry Smith, and I think he was here last night. I think he may be here, from Columbus. The historically imaginative Washington, D.C. designer, Terrence Healy. You'll see what's been accomplished. North Carolina interactive TV guru Luke Klein. The fabricating geniuses of Formations from Oregon. And Ivan Schultz and his artists of Ice Studio of Brooklyn, who, when you go in and look at those statues that they put together, absolutely life-size statues, all of these people played a role in making this happen. And a thing that thrills me the most is, while we were doing all this, all of us that were involved, and there were a lot of people involved, we all learned skills that we never thought we would ever learn or even want to learn. I mean, I know things about architecture and design that I'd never imagined I would know anything about, and I probably still don't know enough. But Ulysses S. Grant once said, quote, "Everyone has his superstitions. One of mine is that in positions of great responsibility, everyone should do his duty to the best of his ability." I dare say that we have been fortunate since Grant Association came to MSU to have people working with us and for us and together with us who've done exactly that. People in positions of great authority who've made sure that it's done right. The result is before you now, for everybody in the state and the nation to see. When we came here, I believe our greatest days were ahead of us. Today, I repeat that same comment. Our greatest days are still ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marszalek. And finally, we will hear from our dean, Dean Francis Coleman, an inspiration to everyone associated with the library, and as Dr. Keenum said in his remarks, someone who has been the beating heart of this project since inception. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Dean Francis Coleman.
Well, goodness, this is really some day, isn't it? And we are here. As Dr. Marszalek said, we weren't real sure we were going to get here, but we did. And we have some people that we do need to thank. And you all have heard all of the wonderful words that these scholars, these individuals have presented to you. And I certainly don't believe that I could think of another one that would be in that group, except that I think that if we looked at our president, and I would like for him to stand and be recognized for his support. If it were not for him, when he first came here, you know, we had worked with Dr. Keenum when he was in Washington, and Sherman, you may remember that when we would go to Washington and we would meet in Senator Cochran's office, and here was this young man, and we never dreamed that he would be our president. But he always helped us. Very modest, but always by the time we returned home, something had happened. And he has done that here at Mississippi State University, and certainly he has stood by the library. Other libraries across the country, as you may know, their budgets have been reduced greatly. Our budget has been flat, and we are making it. We appreciate it. So, Dr. Keenum, we want to thank you. Thank you. Here at Mississippi State University Library, as across the university, we have the team effort. And I have several people that I do need to thank very much. I wish, the list is long. I wish that I could thank everybody who has had a part with this. But I'm just going to need to identify some people. But remember, when you go home tonight, I know that you have worked very hard. So write yourself a note and say, I am appreciated, and I'm very much appreciative of all that's been done for the library. So please do that. Governor, we are honored to have you here today. You've helped us. And you know, I had lunch today with Congressman Harper. He never said a word to me. And here I sat, and I said, and I even said to Mrs. Harper, please write the congressman a note every day and tell him that we need his papers here. And she agreed that she would do that. And here was this gentleman who never said a word to me. But thank you, Congressman Harper. We know that your papers will be most appropriately added to what we already had, and we will do something about your surprise later. How about that? I know that the people whose names I call, it's too crowded to come here, but I would like to call your name. And later we will present that to you, but I do want you to be recognized. And don't fuss at me. Don't get me in a corner after it's over. You know, they do that to me, Dr. Keenum. I want to report that. They tell me all the time what I should have done and I didn't do, such as Deborah Fairbrother. But we are honored to have you here. And as I said last night to Virginia and to the chief, we are honored to have their collection. This is going to provide opportunities for all of us, for our students and our faculty, and for all of our students throughout the state of Mississippi and beyond. So could we thank them one more time? We are so glad to have Sid Salter back. You know, Sid always helps us, and Leilani does. The decorations last night and the dinner were just wonderful, and Leilani had worked on that, so let's thank her as well. We're glad to have Sid back because always, if we have a question, we'll call Sid. Mr. Jerry Smith, are you here today? Mr. Smith works for West Brothers, and he was in charge of the project here. He worked with us so cooperatively. When we needed to have the noise on the other side of the building, he planned projects so that his work would be on that side of the building and would not interfere with what is being done here for exams. We do want to, Kyle Stewart, are you here? I hope you are. You know, I'm not surprised that Kyle did not change his telephone number and not give it to me, and that he took his computer out. But Kyle has been most helpful, and we do appreciate that so much, Kyle, and we hope you get to feeling better as well. Let's see, I don't want to do that one yet. Waverly Oakley is here. Waverly is in charge of the building, and by the way, Governor, I'm going to embarrass Waverly. But would you shake his hand before you leave? We would appreciate that. He said once to me, he said, you know, I've never gotten to shake the hand of a governor. And I said, well, my goodness, we probably, when he comes, we'll ask him. So, Waverly, don't forget. A unit here on campus that has been with us from the very beginning, when we first started the project with talking to the architects and with working with Skip White, has been the Campus Services Unit. From top to bottom, they have been involved in many things that we have been doing, and without them, we could not have done that. So I want them to have a plaque that they can hang and take great pride. We just worked with everybody. This is a unit, I believe it's under the vice presidency of Miss Amy Tuck, and Ms. Tuck, we very much appreciate all that you all did, because that was someone else that we called. One person who has will never again accept an assignment from me, and his hair has turned gray. Stephen Canetto. Stephen, we greatly appreciate all that you have done. I know that when you have gotten telephone calls from me, you probably thought, uh-oh. But Stephen, where are you? Thank you very much. We are so honored to have all of you here, and I believe I have one more plaque. Ryan Sims. Where's Ryan? Ryan and his assistant, Kate Gregory, have done a great job in bringing these collections together. And the identifications that you see, he has really worked hard, and he's worked well with Stephen Canetto. So thank you all very much, and thank all of you for coming. You are a great, great group. Thank you.
David Ferriero knows this. Dr. Hayden will learn this. Everyone from Dr. Keenum on down here at the university, when we deal with Dean Coleman, when she sets her mind on something, there are three words that we go back to, and those words are, resistance is futile. Dean Coleman has done a magnificent job. Please give her a round of applause. A bit of housekeeping. We didn't necessarily anticipate a crowd of this size, and because of occupancy codes, we'll need to limit the number of people in each gallery. So some suggestions. We recommend people sort of split up and begin either in the Williams Gallery or the Grant Gallery. There's also a 20-minute film in the Presidential Library Auditorium that provides a history of Ulysses S. Grant, narrated by Mississippi's own James Earl Jones. We encourage you to enjoy that. The Templeton Museum will show an orientation video that talks about how the Grant Association and the Williams Collection came to Mississippi State, and that is interesting as well. As you can see over here, there's a collection of books and souvenirs and memorabilia for both Grant and Williams that we would encourage you to avail yourself of that. Governor, always an honor to have you on our campus, and particularly participating in this event. Congressman, so glad to have you. All of you, thank you for coming, and we wish you a good day.